Dear friend, there are moments when people enter my room not with questions, but with silence. Not the silence of words, but a silence from the soul, a void. You can feel like a chill seeping through the cracks of consciousness. They sit down and say they are tired, that they no longer see meaning, that everything feels numb. But I do not see a pathology. I do not see a disease to diagnose. I see a soul left behind, like a child lost in a dark forest, waiting endlessly for someone to return. Do you feel this way? As if you are living someone else's life, fulfilling obligations? Nodding, smiling when expected, but within there is a nameless emptiness. Perhaps you have learned to hide it well. Society teaches you that if you are not happy, you are wrong, and so you have learned to wear a mask. But the soul does not die just because it is denied, it only grows silent. And that silence is the warning bell of the shadow. It calls you. It whispers in sleepless nights, in strange dreams, in the inexplicable weariness you try to rationalize away. I am not here to say you have a problem. I only invite you to look into the mirror, not the one where you check your appearance, but the ancient mirror of Narcissus' myth, where the hero saw his reflection and lost himself in the stream of the unconscious. This mirror does not judge you, but it does not forgive deceit. It does not accept masks. It only reflects the truth, however painful. And the first truth is, you have become estranged from your soul. I once said, the approach to the soul does not come from moral rules, but from surrender to the unconscious. You do not need to be better, more positive, or to solve the problem. Instead, sit with me and with yourself in that silence, for it is there where everything seems to collapse, that the first door opens. Do not turn away from the mirror too quickly, even if it frightens you. Even if you see a stranger's face in it, let the fear stay. For this fear is telling you a story your soul has waited long to recount. And when you are ready, we will move forward, not towards the light, but towards the forest, where pain becomes fire, and the shadow ceases to be an enemy and becomes a guide. There is something strange I often witness in those who enter my room. They never come for the light, they come for the darkness. Not the external darkness, not the night, loss or failure, but an inner darkness, something they cannot name, yet carry like a phantom shadow behind every action, every thought. They come and whisper as if afraid to be heard. I don't understand why I always sabotage myself, or I'm afraid I'll become what I hate most. These are not the words of reason, they are the call of the shadow. The shadow der Schatten is not evil, it is not a demon. On the contrary, it is a part of the soul you left behind on the path of social evolution. In adapting, you build the persona, the social mask, the personality society approves. But every time you said, I must not be angry, I cannot be weak, I must always be strong, you pushed a part of your true being into the darkness. You thought you were evolving, but in truth, you were abandoning yourself. I wrote in Ion, the shadow is the personal, unconscious part of the whole being. It is the unavoidable counterpart to any social mask. The more you idealize yourself, the more dangerous the shadow becomes. The most virtuous person may carry the most toxic shadow, for they have denied it too long. And you, if you are reading these lines with a sense of unease, a stirring deep within, perhaps you too are hearing your shadow speak. Do not fear that voice. It is not the cry of a demon, but the scream of your imprisoned soul. It may appear in dreams as a stranger, a pursuer, a monster. But do not run. Turn back and ask, who are you? The answer may make you shudder, but it may also bring tears for you. Realize, it is you, the part forgotten long ago. In a dream of a patient I once treated, she saw herself entering a dark theater where the actors had no faces. They were mere shadows. Repeating a play she could not understand, as she approached the stage, one turned to her with her own face. But older, wearier, why did you leave me behind? It asked. That is the shadow speaking. Are you hearing it? In moments when you feel nothing, when you suddenly hate yourself without knowing why, when you lash out at someone for no clear reason, the shadow is whispering. It does not demand control, but recognition. It does not want your submission, but an invitation to sit beside you. Acknowledging the shadow is the first step in the journey of individuation. Without it, any attempt at growth is merely adding polish to the mask. The shadow is a stern teacher, the Hermes guiding the soul to the underworld, the gatekeeper of the abyss and the guide to the spirit. If you are ready to listen, I invite you to continue with me into stage 3, where the inner forest opens and the soul begins to whisper ancient memories. Are you ready to step further into the darkness to find your own light? Dear friend, if in the previous stage the shadow whispered, now you are entering the forest where it dwells. I am not speaking of a literal forest, not the black forest of Germany or the ancient woods of Siberia. I speak of the forest of the soul, where figures from the collective unconscious wait, where language is no longer words, but symbols. And as you venture deeper, you will meet strange beings, not people, not spirits, but archetypes, primal images that humanity has carried in its blood since the dawn of time. Have you ever felt as if you are not only living your own life, but repeating something ancient, a pattern, a destiny, a nameless spiral? That is the echo of the archetype forms existing in the collective unconscious, das Kollektiv Unbewusste, where all of us, regardless of language, nationality, or religion, are connected like roots of the same tree. The shadow is the first archetype you meet, for it is the gate to the forest, but go deeper and you will encounter others. The anima and animus, the feminine soul in a man and the masculine soul in a woman. You will meet the wise old man, the image of guidance, like Merlin in Arthurian legend. You will meet the eternal child puer aeternus, the innocent, immortal part of you, always yearning for adventure and fleeing reality. And sometimes you will meet the trickster, the one who makes you stumble. So you learn to rise in dreams. These archetypes do not bear clear names. They appear in images, a woman in a white dress inviting you to a deep well, anima, an old man with glasses handing you a half-burned map, wise old man, a child standing at a cliff's edge, laughing as if daring you to jump, or a bizarre jester who frightens and fascinates you, trickster. These symbols are not illusions, they are energies. They are manifestations of parts of your soul that reason cannot control. And as you stand in that forest, a question arises not from another, but from within you. Who am I, if so many voices live within me? That question may panic you, as one of my patients once screamed in a sleepwalking state, "I don't know which one is me!" But, dear friend, this is not madness. It is the beginning of consciousness. The realization that you are a whole, not just the waking ego, but a living spiritual community within. Nietzsche wrote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster." And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. I agree, but I also believe that if you gaze into the abyss with empathy, the abyss will return an image you have never seen, the image of your whole being. And that is the goal of individuation, not to eliminate the shadow, not to destroy the archetypes, but to reconcile, recognize, and bring them into the light of consciousness, a light that does not overpower darkness, but a light that knows darkness is part of itself. In this journey, you are not a tourist with a map and schedule, you are a pilgrim in the forest of the soul. No trails, nor certain guides, but do not fear the symbols, dreams, and intense emotions, anger, longing, fear are the voices of the forest, inviting you to understand yourself. And if you lose your way, do as the alchemists did, return to the symbol. Do not ask right or wrong. Ask, what does this symbol say about me? When you dream of a collapsing tower, do not call it a sign of bad luck. Perhaps it is the social mask crumbling. When you dream of falling into a deep well, it may be an invitation to return to the unconscious. Every symbol is a map, not a map of directions, but a map of the soul. We will go deeper into the place where the soul is forged like metal in an alchemical furnace, where the ego begins to melt, so the true being can arise. And if your heartbeat remains steady, you are ready, for the soul never speaks softly. It only cries out when you are silent enough to hear. Are you ready to listen? We have passed through the forest where archetypes whisper, and now I invite you to enter a stranger, even unsettling space, the place where the ego begins to dissolve. The ancients called it the alchemical chamber. I call it the chamber of the soul. There is no physical smoke or fire here, but there are seething pains, inner conflicts like molten metal, and emotions too chaotic to name. Yet it is here that individuation truly begins. Do you recall the image of medieval alchemists? They sat in rooms filled with vials, crucibles, and symbols etched on walls. They sought not just gold, but the philosopher's stone, lapis philosophorum, which could transform base matter into something noble. For me, alchemy is not chemistry. It is a metaphor for the spiritual journey. The lapis is not in the physical world. It is a symbol of the self, the center of the soul, whole but obscured. And the alchemical fire, it is crisis, suffering, the collision between the ego and the shadow. I have observed hundreds of patients entering this stage. They are no longer angry as they were at first, nor enraptured by idealization as when they met the anima or the wise old man. They are silent, their eyes are empty. They say, I no longer know who I am. This is the nigredo, the dark stage of alchemy. The soul is thrown into decay, the ego disintegrates like shattered stone, like ash, but do not fear. In those ashes, the miracle begins. You will dream of being burned. You will see yourself falling into a bottomless abyss, stripped of skin, buried alive. These images are not punishment, they are rituals. In Eastern and Western traditions, we have the concept of symbolic death, like Osiris torn apart, like Jesus crucified. This is how the soul crosses the threshold. In the Red Book, I recorded my dream of being buried in the earth. My heart beat like a hammer on a coffin. But I also recorded rising, brushing off the dust, and seeing a light shining from within me. You too will experience this in the chamber of the soul. The ego always seeking control. Concealment, rationalization will no longer be king. It will learn to bow before something greater. That is the self, the center of the whole personality, beyond the ego. The alchemist does not burn metal with ordinary fire. They use the mystical fire, ignis noster. Likewise, you cannot force individuation with reason or method. You must be patient, letting the fire of emotions and symbols do the work of transformation. When you dream of dissolving, do not panic. It is deconstruction. When you feel meaningless, as if all values have collapsed, do not conclude you are depressed. Perhaps you are in the stage of dissolution for rebirth. The old must die for the new to be born. There is a symbol I often use, the vessel in alchemy. The vessel is where the soul is forged. In psychoanalysis, the vessel is the analytic frame where patient and analyst hold space together for transformation. But you do not need an analyst to begin. Write a journal, draw symbols, observe dreams, sit still in chaos. That is how you create the inner vessel. But I warn you, this stage may linger. There is no fixed time for transformation. For some, months. For others, years. But remember this, if you are honest with yourself, if you do not rush to label or heal quickly, the light will gradually appear. In alchemy, after nigredo comes albedo, the silver light, purification, then rubedo, the red blaze union. Dear friend, if you now feel empty, lost or directionless, you may not be failing, but standing at the heart of the chamber of the soul, and that is where all myths begin. In the next stage, we will witness the return of light, not a light from without, but one born from your ashes. A gentle but enduring light, the only light that can illuminate darkness without erasing it. Making it part of the light, you are very close. Step forward. If the previous stage was the moment you dissolved in the furnace of the soul, now As you open your eyes amidst the ashes, something gentle yet strange begins to happen. You are no longer the old self, but you do not yet know who you are. The fragments remain, the dreams are disjointed, but there is something shimmering, fragile, like a tiny seed lying still in the earth after a long winter, just sprouting under the first spring sun. This is the moment the true self selbst softly speaks. The true self is not your ego, not the everyday personality accustomed to control, analysis, role-playing. The true self is the center of the whole person, encompassing consciousness and unconsciousness, light and darkness, instinct and metaphysical intuition. It is the part you cannot craft or build, only listen to and resurrect. The alchemists called this moment Rubedo the red stage, where the final element unites, where gold is born from ash, where the soul returns to wholeness. But it is not an end. On the contrary, it is the true beginning, the beginning of a life with depth, where you no longer live by ego or societal expectations, but by the deepest call, rising from your darkness, now become part of the light. You will feel this subtly. One day you will dream of walking between two worlds, no longer torn between reason and the unconscious, no longer fearing the shadow or avoiding pain. You will see yourself embracing a child once abandoned, or holding the hand of a fearsome figure that once haunted you. These dreams are not mere fantasies. They are manifestations of individuation unfolding. Let me tell you of a dream a patient had after years of therapy. She saw herself crossing a stone bridge. Below, a river of fire. At the other end stood a woman in a white cloak. Holding a mirror and a lamp, she approached, trembling. But when she looked into the mirror, she saw her own face without makeup, without pretense, and those eyes glowed. The woman said, "You have returned." That was the dream marking the emergence of the true self. Not perfect, not omnipotent, but sincere and tied to the soul. You will see this in yourself. No bells ring. No certificate declares, "I have individuated." But you will act differently. When others hurt you, you do not react hastily. You listen to the inner emotion. When faced with a choice, you do not ask, "What will others think?" but, "Is this true to me?" You begin to live as if guided by an inner center, and indeed, there is one, the self. In this journey, symbols come alive. You may see a faint light at the end of a tomb. That is the light from within you, which no one can extinguish. You may see the mirror now, reflecting not the ego's concealment, but the deep portrait you never dared face. You may see the forest, once a place of fear, now a sacred sanctuary where all archetypes live with you. Every dream, every emotion, every pain all become signs of the soul, guiding you back to the center. I want you to understand, this is not spiritual success or complete healing. It is acceptance that you are a whole with light and darkness, wounds and potential, doubt and intuition, instinct and divinity. In that acceptance, you are no longer torn apart. You are harmonized. And from that harmony, you enter a new state of living as a living symbol of yourself. This stage is not a conclusion. It is a gateway to deeper layers, where the true self begins to dialogue with the world, with society, with community, without being consumed by them. That will be the journey of the light bearer, not to illuminate others, but to remind yourself that light was born from darkness. So hold fast to the small lamp you have kindled within. We will use it in the stages to come, where you learn to carry that light into the world without losing yourself, where you become a bridge between symbol and life, dream and action, soul and society. This is the beginning of a new phase, the phase of one who has died within themselves and is now learning to live again. Truly, dear friend, if the earlier stages were a journey deep into the soul, where you faced the shadow, dissolved in ashes, and kindled the new flame of the true self. Now you stand at another crossroads. It does not lead back to the chaos of the unconscious, nor to a safe, serene haven. Instead, it points to the world out there, with its chaos, ignorance, and human loneliness. And so you must set out again. In the Red Book, I wrote, "He who looks outward dreams, he who looks inward awakens." But perhaps I should add, he who has awakened within must learn to dream amidst the world. For the light you found, the light born from facing the shadow, is not meant for solitary contemplation. It must be tested. It must enter the world, into relationships, work, family, community, where old conflicts once tormented you, so that this time you walk with a different consciousness. And here you will realize the shadow never vanishes. It is still there, no longer terrifying, but ever present. It appears when you feel hurt by a loved one, when you are rejected, when you feel anger without knowing why, when you are pulled back into old roles, the pleaser, the rebel, the frightened child, the lone hero. But this time, instead of reacting automatically, you pause, you listen. You know the shadow is not an enemy, it is a signal, a living symbol. You ask, which part of me is being triggered? Which abandoned child within me is crying out? And so you dialogue, no longer denying, no longer fighting, but dialoguing. This is the foundation for reconciliation with the world. Reconciliation without dissolving, forgiveness without forgetting, connection without losing yourself. One who has been wounded and has learned to transform that wound into soul knowledge can become a light bearer. But beware, this light is not dazzling, not preachy, not heroic. It is quiet, humble, subtle, and because of this, it holds true healing power. You may see it in how you listen to others, no longer to argue, but to understand what moves within them. You may see it in how you work, no longer to prove, but to contribute to something meaningful. You may see it in how you love, no longer seeking to be filled, but sharing from a cup filled by your own tears. But the world will test you. There will be times you feel pulled into old vortices, a toxic relationship. an unused system, a noisy society, you will want to flee or fight. But remember, no symbol endures without being sustained through action. And action, in the spirit of individuation, is action harmonized between the inner and outer worlds, neither idealizing nor judging. I recall a dream of a man wounded by a harsh father. In the dream, he entered an ancient house where his father sat, old and frail. On the table were a knife and a candle. He thought to take the knife, but instead he lit the candle, and in its light he saw his father weeping. In the dream, he sat down, saying nothing. That was a dream of reconciliation, not through words, not through rational forgiveness, but through light. You, too, with the flame kindled from earlier stages, will learn to light such candles, not to make the world perfect, but to keep your heart from closing again. You will see that every symbol you encountered, the mirror, the forest, the fire now lives in daily life, a mirror in your room reflecting your eyes, no longer afraid, a forest you walk through, reminding you of the unconscious once forgotten, a fire in the kitchen becoming an image of life, of the soul being cooked. This stage closes nothing. It opens a dual reality where you are both a human in society and a pilgrim of the spirit, living like others, yet knowing you are unique, a living symbol of a journey through the shadow to become yourself, and I hope in the journey ahead where you learn to share that light, where you meet those you once hurt, where you face systems you once feared you will not forget. You carry both light and darkness. And that reconciliation is the greatest gift you can bring to the world. We will continue, for as I once wrote, there is no light that does not pass through darkness. There is no whole that was not once fragmented. And you are ready to carry that whole into the world, not to triumph, but to be present as a living symbol, as a human who has returned from the deepest forest of themselves